everyone. Welcome to Hospitality Today Live. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Deborah Gardner, your host, and we are so excited that you are back for another exciting year talking about hospitality, all the stories, the perspectives, opinions, and insights from all the hospitality people in the industry. And this is the place to do it on the #1 hospitality show right here on HTL. So thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to kick off the year with someone extremely special in the industry, the industry's finest CHSE, Michael Dominguez. Yes, he is the president and CEO of Associated Luxury Hotels International, and he is in the house. And I'm so excited for him to be here. And everyone I know knows him very well. He's very actively involved in leadership roles in the meetings and events industry, from U.S. travel, MPI, meetings mean business. I mean, the whole list goes on. It would take us the entire show to go over his credentials and his awards. But he also talks on the topic of the state of the industry and so much more. The other thing I like about him, he actually leads a full women executive ALHI team. And with a collection of 250 more of hotels and resorts and DMCs and cruise lines, they are really a great luxury company worldwide. And we are so excited to have him here. Michael's going to help us kick off this season by analyzing what's yet to come in the industry. He's going to talk about when's the next COVID going to happen, and popular trends and how it's going to impact your goals. And plus, I have a very personal question that I'm going to ask Michael that he's never heard before, and so much more. So don't go away. Be right back. Strategically in print and design, visiblymedia.com. So here we are kicking off the new year with Michael Dominguez. We are so excited. Everybody's excited to have you here, even me, to where I even wore perfume.
So welcome. Are we now in that virtual moment? I saw that we're going to be able to look on the screen or be able to smell things on the screen. That's good. That is awesome. Deborah, I love your energy and your enthusiasm.
Oh, thank you.
I mean it. What a great way to start out the year. And I think sometimes we start to get into this poor me syndrome and we forget, life is grace. And I appreciate the energy. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks. Well, just trying to keep up with you, sir. And I tell you, it's always a delight to run into you at conferences or meetings along the way, but to have you on the show is really extra special. And I know everybody's going to jump on with some questions, comments, but in the meantime, we'll get this ball rolling because it'll go fast. And I know we want to talk about, the future, what it looks like, and for the industry for the year to come. But we can't stop from talking about what we actually have been through in this era of rapid change and instability that everybody's gone through. And with my sports broadcasting background, I'm all about data. As a matter of fact, I'm a data freak, and I know you are too. We just like a sponge and we eat it up. But we really found that this whole year has been a stop and go type of situation, especially with all the different data out there and the mainstream media having, different data as well. I know that, we look back and we saw about 1.5 million jobs taken away out of our industry. And I think that's twice the loss of the Depression. We had 77% of people that lost 100% of their income, and 96% of companies, cut their staff. But yet fast forward this past November, we saw some movement of people coming back, about 23,000 jobs, which is not a lot, but it's something. What do you what do you see going on, and looking back like this, why weren't we ready, and what did we learn from all of this? And are we going to see people coming back to the industry? I know that's a loaded gun question, but I'm sure everybody wants to know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And yes, I'm a data geek as well. One of the things we haven't pointed out, it's the service industry that has been growing jobs at the fastest pace over the last 6 months. So we are the growth, and that comes back with us getting back in play. But, Deborah, I think the pieces that people forget to talk about, it's a complex issue when you talk about labor and coming back. One of the biggest issues in the United States that we're not talking about is we lost 100,000 daycare workers. And with schools being closed, our line level employees are not coming back to work if they don't have a place to put their kids.
Good point.
And we keep missing that. It's not that people are running away from our industry. We have complex issues that we have to deal with. And, one of the things I've been talking to a couple of DMOs is, when do we as an industry start to think about, in the city that is so dependent, in certain cities that are so dependent on hospitality, travel, and hotels, how do we start investing in daycare? How do we start creating daycare units within those cities that are 24/7, that people that work in our industry will have a place to? We need to start thinking differently moving forward to solve some of those problems. And if there's anything around the pandemic that's a silver lining, is it elevated some of these problems that were underneath the surface that we would have never seen. We would have never seen our dependence on daycare. But when you look at states that remained closed and they kept schools closed, with schools being closed, those daycares didn't open. And now that they're trying to open, we're lacking all the people that went on to other jobs, possibly, that need to get back into daycares, and we need to revamp that. And then you add to that is, one of our best resources for labor are college students. Because we're 24/7 and we're flexible with hours, universities were closed. They went virtual. So the people that we would normally have in some of those jobs, we don't have, because those universities are closed. And then probably the biggest piece that nobody's talked about is our J1 visa caps and our H2B visas. We are an industry that has always depended on seasonal labor, because we get crushed at certain times, and it's not enough to have that labor year round, but only in certain periods. Well, the J1 visas, we lost, I saw a report, 100,000 jobs were missing in our industry with J1 visas, because those schools weren't operating and those programs weren't operating from overseas. Add to it the H2B visa that we hit the cap in early January of this year. The administration expands that, doubles it, but with our inefficiencies in our government, we left almost 50,000 jobs on the table that never got processed.
Unbelievable.
So those pieces are missing in our conversation. And there's a great article that's been written. I saw it in the Wall Street Journal that talked about, we keep talking about the Great Resignation. It's not the Great Resignation, it's a great relocation. People have decided to move. And when you're seeing people flood out of certain states, when you've seen people say, coming out of the pandemic, I want to be closer to family, I've made decisions that I want to move home, there's a lot of dust that needs to settle before we figure out exactly what is and what isn't. But we are seeing a large ramp up of people coming back to jobs. Some of the people that left jobs went on to careers that, candidly, they probably would have never jumped off the diving board if it wasn't for the pandemic, saying, I have nothing to lose, let me go for it.
Wow.
And in that, those are life alterations. I don't necessarily think it's long term. And you've heard me say before, I think it's important to be decisively indecisive right now. Let's not make definitives on what the long term is going to be, because it's going to take a little time for that dust to settle. But when it comes to labor, all I can tell you, it's really complex. There is not one issue or one statement, yet I've heard that definitively from people. And like, no, that's not the whole issue. There's a lot of issues going on that we have to solve. And I think we will. It's getting better month by month. The government's now focusing on the J1s and the H2Bs. We start to move that along, and we're going to be better. And Deborah, we got crushed in summer when we opened up, and nobody expected the demand that we saw from a leisure perspective. we got crushed in the summer when we always ramp up with that seasonal labor and we don't have it.
Isn't that interesting? Wow.
So it was
been
a
a mixed
perfect storm.
bag.
It was a perfect storm across the board when it was all said and done.
Yeah, and we're dealing with a mixed bag, trying to find our way back. Do we have any government assistance or representation from the White House in order to help this industry? Because I mean, literally, we are one of the largest industries, more than auto, retail, pharma. I mean, why is there anybody taking care of us, representing us? I know a lot of our hospitality leaders have been there. Is there any movement in that area?
Yes. And what's interesting is U.S. Travel is our main voice when they're one of our main voices when it comes to being an advocate on the Hill. And yes, we have the White House's attention. They listen and they understand some of our needs. But when we talk about the help, there was a lot of help that was written into both of the stimulus programs that were passed in Washington. And that was due to a lot of loud voices, not only U.S. Travel, AHLA, and others that were really beating the drum to explain, here's the needs of our industry. As we start to come out of this, I think that there's a lot of programming. The piece that's still out there on the table was legislation we were trying to move that was really going to be around making sure that we provide incentives for people to be traveling again, specifically from a business perspective. And, we've seen leisure demand come back. It's the business side of it that we really need to focus on. And probably one of the greatest pieces of legislation that's picking up steam and has bipartisan support is the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act. It's called PRIA. That would actually set up a backstop where your current insurer of any small business, whoever you get your insurance through, would be able to cover disruption insurance. And the reason they would issue it without a lot of pushback is this bill would call for the Treasury Department to backstop 95% of the payout. So the insurance company would only be responsible for 5% of the payout in case of another pandemic disruption in business. And the reason that's important, if you think about it, it's PPP already set up with us not having to pass that kind of legislation at the last minute, because it would actually have a structure already put in play. So there's a lot of good things going on in Washington. We just don't hear about it because of all the noise we hear in the media about everything else.
Right. Very good point. Very good point. And you're getting a flood of comments and questions that are coming through our chat. And I want to go ahead and get started here with some people because, they want to know some questions. Sure. Lisa Raymond wants to know, should the industry post jobs that, can be offsite as a remote work or just as a possibility, or what are your thoughts in that area?
I'm not sure completely on the question, but we are posting jobs that are off-site as far as remote work. That is, there's some work that can be remote. There's some work that can't be. Right. And when we talk about remote work, I think that's the piece that's missed. But you are finding a lot of jobs that are being located remotely. There is also a lot of pressure and presence around the fact that people are looking to keep a cultural adhesion and trying to figure out what is going to be the cadence of people coming back to an office, a mothership, so to speak. And sure. we keep talking about a hub and spoke model. There will be a hub. There's going to be a lot of spokes, but we got to understand that people are going to continue to come back to the hub. And that's actually encouraging for me. Even if you have remote work, there's going to be a need for that cultural adhesion to bring people together more often, which should improve business travel long-term. So the answer is yes. And again, I see it as a positive sign.
And speaking of bringing people together, it's so strange, especially during the holidays. You see all these huge sporting events, parades that have been happening now, thousands of people out there, but we can't have 100-person in-person meeting. I mean, are we dragging our feet? Should we be more aggressive in that area?
Yeah.
So imbalanced there.
I'm laughing because I remembered watching Iowa and I forgot who they beat, but when they flooded the field, I looked at my wife and said, and we're worried about 50 people in a meeting room.
Yes.
There is this disconnect. And Deborah, I'll take it a step further. The NBA, the NFL had 110 players that were on COVID protocols because they tested positive, and nobody was freaking out about the player's health.
Right.
And I think there's a separation. There's the seriousness of the pandemic and those that are most vulnerable. And then there's this added fear that has been added on. And I'm not blaming the media. It's the sensationalism of all the news that's been around us for over now 18 months that adds this extra layer of fear on top of it. And I don't disagree with you. And, I think it's context, though. I think people are trying to, in our world, they're trying to say, can I gather 100 people with no cases? When I think the context should be, can I gather 100 people and know that my cases don't look any different than if I was in my general population?
Good point.
That if we are trying to get to zero COVID in a meeting, that is almost impossible in today's environment. But what we should be doing is making sure we're providing the right environments so that we can meet safely. Now, I will tell you, I've been beating the drum on one thing. We have had too many people in the industry that have been stuck on, you've got to be vaccinated to come to a meeting. And when I say this, I always tell people, you're going to hear that I'm against vaccines, and that's not what I said. I think it's ineffective policy to create an environment that's going to reduce spread in a meeting. We're missing testing. The reason the NFL had their breakout is because they weren't testing vaccinated players except for every 14 days. Anybody unvaccinated had to be tested weekly and twice a week, as a matter of fact. So what we're kind of missing is that it's a testing issue, not a vaccination issue. With that said, I think it's important for people to get vaccines to stay out of a hospital, but it doesn't stop the spread of the virus. And I think it's ineffective policy for meetings if you're not going to be testing. Testing is the critical component of it. And the closer in we can test, the more impactful it's going to be.
Okay, good point. Very good point. We've got Brian here on the show with a question for you. How will industry associates and professionals change going forward in light of additional security? Is it security on budgets? Oh, yeah. Travel spending. Oh, yeah. This is a very good question, actually.
Yeah, it's, what's interesting is that I think what we've seen so far is for everybody you think you may be reducing, we're finding new opportunities with people coming in that want to get into this arena. And I think that's part of a missing story. We're going to hear about these budgets might be tightening up. Here is going to be some travel that may be reallocated. But at the same time, we're forgetting about here are the new companies that are entering our space. Here are the people that want to be present. The amount of new businesses that launched through a pandemic, we tend to forget are going to be very aggressive about marketing and being there. What you're going to lose is some of the traditional suspects that might pull back a bit, but you're going to get new surprises that come out. And probably one of my best examples of that is, let's talk about retail. We've heard about 6,000 retail outlets that have closed, but nobody talks about the 4,800 new retail outlets that opened.
Coming in.
And we're kind of missing that. It's the same in our industry. I'm seeing so many new small businesses, new technologies, new programs that are coming in that I didn't even see 5-6 years ago. And they're wanting to spend money in our industry. They're wanting to get to a PCMA and MPI's audience. So I think it goes back to my statement earlier. The dust needs to settle. And we need to see where the dust is going to settle. But I wouldn't look at it as a net loss. I would say we're losing in certain areas, but we're finding new revenue streams in unusual suspects, which is good for the industry because it brings in some fresh blood and some fresh creativity.
Right. Well, Michael, you always explain that so beautifully and so confidently, and good thing, because we, I believe, are being more optimistic now that we've got I call them the 4 phases, fear, understanding, action, and recovery. And I think we've gotten the fear, we've got a better understanding. Now we need to get to the action portion in order for us to recover. And it starts with having confidence. And the global meetings events forecast for Amex just came out, and they said people are starting to feel more confident, especially around the world. North America is 74% optimistic, especially by June and July. Europe is 59% more optimistic, and they expect 48% just in person only, which is good news, really. Central South America, they are the most optimistic, with 87%. They'll go a little bit virtual. And Asia Pacific, 64%. And they're looking to return in the next year. So I see optimism and confidence is the first piece of action that we need to take. Any other areas that we need to look at and start planning and start doing things that will be beneficial for all of us in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, I agree, Deborah. And it is about what we're hearing right now is people that are adamant that we're going to move forward. They're trying to move forward with their meetings. What I am getting questions about and got it over the holidays was, how do I meet? What should I be doing? If I'm going to do testing, who can provide it? You know, we do have an issue in this country right now that how we're not prepared for testing this far into it is a little bit perplexing, but that is our challenge right now. We need to do a better job of testing, but that's that confidence that people are moving forward and they're like, we want to move forward. I want to make sure we can test and do that effectively. The other positive that came out of this, and I've been hearing it from many of our clients, the meetings that are coming online right now and the new RFPs we've seen, they are new meetings as a whole. They're not meetings that have been postponed. They're not annuals. That what they're hearing more and more is that within companies, within organizations, the conversation is around, we've got to meet. We've got to bring people together. So there's a lot of new meetings that are being added to this. And I think that's going to be a real positive for us. One last positive note is, you know, in November, we saw unique RFPs just within our ALHI portfolio. Our unique RFPs, it's the first time they had exceeded 2019 levels and literally was a record for November, a November period for us with unique leads. But over the last 5 months, except for the September pullback, we literally were getting at 92 to 96% of our lead volume that we saw, unique lead volume that we saw in 2019. That gives me a lot of optimism moving forward.
That's great to hear. Now, ALHI, speaking of, serves as a global sales organization for exclusive memberships of the world's distinguished independently and operated and owned hotels,
correct,
resorts, DMCs, cruise lines, things like that. And is there anything that ALHI is doing differently this year that's going to really help the entire organization and make a difference in the hospitality industry that maybe even other of our viewers are thinking of, looking at new ideas just like ALHI?
Yeah, we do these executive exchanges and we do these executive programs. We do 4 of them a year outside of the 100 other programs we do. We really focus on those being a laboratory and saying, how can we experiment with you in the audience to say what works, what doesn't. And we let people know, here's our thinking. We don't try to make it a dog and pony show. We try to say, let us take the risk. We're telling you what risk we're taking, and we'll tell you what worked and what didn't and what we learned out of it. So out of every meeting, we're creating an executive summary. And that executive summary is basically, here was our thought process. Here's how we executed. Here's what we learned. Here's where we missed when it was all said and done. And here would be our recommendations to you, should you try to use some of these ideas. I think more people need to do that. And we've gotten to a point, instead of, how I've shared it with our team is, there's this, there's a friend of mine that used to be an Air Force pilot. And he always said, after every mission, you sit in a room and you analyze how you flew, what decisions you made, which decisions you should have made, because it could save somebody's life down the road. That's how you learn. But you're putting the mistakes on the table. You think about a surgeon that loses somebody in the middle of a surgery. They have to be in front of all their peers to go through every piece of the surgery so that everybody learns from it. But as an industry, we don't do that.
No, we don't.
We tend to try to put everything under the rug instead of saying, what can we learn? And if there's anything we're trying to push, is as an industry, we're only going to get better if we can really talk about our failures as often as we talk about our successes. And we don't tend to do that because it's not a comfortable place to be. But that's where the real growth comes from.
Right.
Is being able to be able to say, here's the swing and the miss.
Yeah, we're planners that we didn't plan this to happen. And we're so used to on the go all the time. Maybe that's our learning lesson through all of this is maybe we need to slow down to speed up and
really
just
do.
kind of really, take our time, because I know in the meetings industry, we go from one meeting to the next, and maybe we need to really start thinking about quality instead of quantity.
Yeah. And Deborah, I would add too, is what we've really focused on, and this is going to be our focus this year. We've spent 18 months trying to figure out how to meet. It's all been about protocols. I'm now trying to emphasize with people, let's remember why we're meeting, about the engagement, the connection, the environment. What are we creating? We've kind of not forgotten about it. We've gotten rusty with that because we have spent 18 months just trying to meet.
Right.
That we really need to focus on the human engagement, the human connection, and the reason we're coming together. And that really is our push for the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I can't tell you how many people are on here. All your fans. My goodness. We've got Tara here. Yes, bring people together. You are so right, sister. We've got Pamela here. Thanks for your time. I always enjoy hearing Michael's insights. Yes, that's why we have him on this show today. Let's see, we've got, oh my gosh, we've got John. Yep, we've got John on here. Hi, John, all the way from Seattle. Big
Happy New Year, John.
Yeah, and we've got Bob, who was the first on here. Happy hour. He took a shower for this whole day. That's a great start to the year, Bob. Thank you so
well done, Bob. It wasn't even Saturday and Bob took a shower. That's great.
Exactly. We've got Inga here. Oh my goodness. We've got all kinds of your fans. We can't go through all of these. This is great. Totally enjoying it. Well, is there anything that you personally had learned? You've done such a great job of keeping us informed of what's been going on and such great insights. But from a personal standpoint of view, is there anything that you learned through all of this?
Yeah, you know what I did learn is that I found that people are very much a product of their environments, and their mindset is a product of their environments. And I found that having conversations around the country, depending on where I was at, it had a very different tone around the pandemic, whether we should be meeting, not meeting, depending on where people live and what was their experience through this. And I wished, my wish was that we would have a tremendous amount of grace for people and understand everybody's in a different place. We could be a little less judgmental. That wish didn't always come true. And unfortunately, when you have a voice or you're trying to make sure that people are getting the right information and making good decisions for themselves, that you're going to take heat for that. And that's okay. What I learned, and I had to remind my team, is I'm okay with that. And there's a good friend of mine that I'll never forget his comment. And he was the COO of US Travel at the time, but he said, Mike, you'd rather have critics than be irrelevant. The only reason you have critics is because you're relevant to the conversation.
Right.
And I remember that, and it always sticks with me that if you're going to have a voice, then you have to be able to do that, and you're going to have to be able to do it confidently. But, you know, most importantly, I realized through all of this, my biggest mission was to keep my team positive. And Deborah, I don't know enough people that did this, and it was organic. It was listening to my gut, but we had an everyday call with our entire organization every day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Started on March 16th. We took it to 3 days a week starting in July, just because we started moving again. And we felt it wasn't necessary to do it every day. And we're going to move that to twice a week, but we're still doing those calls.
That's great.
And every day it was coming together to let everyone know you're not alone and there's no need to be afraid. And we're going to get through this together.
Yep.
That was my responsibility. And if there's anything I learned is that at certain times you also needed to not be tone deaf. When we had social unrest in this country, I wasn't going to get on a call and talk about bookings and COVID. We stopped and said, let's talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
What is everybody feeling?
Right.
And those are the moments that I think that it was a good learning perspective to say, let's make sure we're focused on the human beings, not just the environment. And
Right.
if you can do that, the rest of it will take care of itself.
Yeah, good lesson learned. Good lesson learned. Well, this half hour has really gone so fast with you, Michael. We can't help other than to say thank you so much for joining us. But I do have one more question for you, and I know you're preparing yourself for this, but this is a personal question that I know even the viewers want to know, and you've never been asked before. When we had the lockdown, when you were at home, after you moved into your house, everything was, settled, and you could not go out that door like most of us. Did you help around the house? Did you take the trash out? Did you do some cooking? Because I know you travel a lot and you're on the road, but did Marcy get any help from you at all while you were at home?
That is funny. Like Marcy does the cleaning for sure. She'll tell you she's a little bit of a clean freak in a good way. She's the one that will clean after a housekeeper comes to clean. So in that regard, she doesn't want me cleaning. But I do cook, and I do the cooking, and it's kind of and it's just been, it was never said. It's just kind of our rhythm that I cook, she does the dishes, because again, she doesn't want me doing the dishes. And she's such a clean freak. She continues to clean my dishes as I'm still using them, and I have to go back and get them. But no, it was a good rhythm. I will tell you, we binged a lot on Netflix, which was great. So
yeah. I think we had different roles. I became a domestic housewife right away. I mean, it was a different role. So being at home, I think I dirtied up a lot more things than being on the road. But yeah, I was just curious what you've been doing at home.
And my experience was a little different, because we closed down, officially shut down for about 2 weeks here in Dallas. And then I came to the office because everybody else was at home.
Gotcha.
So I could come to the office by myself.
So you were there by yourself.
And I stayed isolated and basically,
that's good.
Stayed out of the way. But it gave me an opportunity to be here, be focused, and give enough space. So yeah,
that's great. Well, we had to be, one of the big words this year is flexibility, and I think that really started right away for us when this whole thing hit, no doubt. Well, thank you again, and I'm sure that a lot of people would like to stay in touch with you. I've got your email and of course ALHI's website for people to know more about you there. And is there any other way that people can contact you or stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm definitely on LinkedIn. So anyone can connect and throw messages to me on the LinkedIn. If there's any questions that we didn't answer, I'm happy to address. And my Instagram, everybody who knows it, my Instagram is hopefully just to make you smile. There's nothing serious on my Instagram. I've become known for my silly letterboards. And
I like those.
Yeah. And Deborah, if you look at my stories, I always post the sunrise and the sunset every day to remind everybody of the beauty that is around us, and that life is grace. And that is the only reason I do that. It's just a quick reminder that there is beauty in the world every day if you just take a minute to look around. So
perfect. I totally agree with you. Well, thank you, sir, so much for joining us. We really appreciate you helping us kickstart this year here on HTL. And I know we'll be seeing you around for sure. So
appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the good fight. Thank you.
Betcha. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you go. Did we not promise you a great start to 2022? Michael Dominguez, one of the finest here in the industry, was able to share some unique information and new things that you might want to take into consideration for the new year as well. And if you enjoyed this episode, by all means, know that there is a replay. You can share it with your team. You can share it with your family and friends as well. So all you have to do is go to your favorite platform formats, and it will be right there. So thank you so much for joining us. And we want to thank our sponsor, Visibly Media, for today's episodes. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to be on our guest list, which we do have a waiting list in 2022, but we want to try to get everyone in as much as possible, please email us at hello@hospitalitytodaylive.com. Now, for next Tuesday, we've got something very unique that I know you're going to be interested in. We don't have a guest that is going to be scheduled other than you being the guest. And if you'd like to be a guest and like to take a topic, or you want to just kind of talk about what the comments are, or maybe just have a voice and a perspective, or maybe a story to share, by all means, come on to the show with me next Tuesday. I will be here, and we'll also put some information out there on social media so that it will be a reminder that you can join me with any type of conversation. So take advantage of that, because the rest of the year will be busy, no doubt. So other than that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us here. We definitely want to continue our show for you. So thank you so much for continuing to support it. And then we'll just keep it going for you, especially starting next Tuesday. So thanks again for joining us. And again, remember, if we're talking about it, we are doing it right here. So keep thinking about it. We'll talk about it here. We'll see you next week, everybody. Thank you.